Ctení hostia, vážené dámy, vážení páni.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear young people, dear guests, and dear colleagues, I do dare to say colleagues because I do see familiar faces from academia. I would like to apologize for speaking in Slovakia because English is not very close to me, and I think that I might be using some terminology mistakenly. I hope that you can follow along the interpretation and everything is going to be clear to you. What I would like to talk to you about, as someone who has been dealing with children's rights and the protection of children's rights for a long time, and along the same way, I'm also engaged in criminal law at the oldest university of Bratislava and Slovakia. I used to be a rector at the Faculty of Law, and now I'm the first Minister of State of the Ministry of the Interior, but I did not turn the back on academia. I remained a teacher, and we deal with topics that I also engaged in the legislative process, and now it is the application, the actual practice that I'm dealing with. And it is a great honor and a huge privilege to be a speaker at this conference, which is wonderfully organized. There is participants and speakers invited that really indeed covers a wide scope of children's rights. Now, I'm very happy that with the Ombudsman, with the Commissioner, there are others along with us who are actually affected by these laws. We have children here in our midst as well at the Slovakian Children's Parliament, where I listen to children's wishes and desires, how they imagine the representation and the enforcement of their rights, how the rights of children could be actually validated. This is a benefit that is of great value to me because I'm of the opinion that children are to be considered as partners. They have their own ideas. They do know how these rights should be enforced. And they can debate, they can engage in a conversation because a debate and a discussion is always of importance because if we conduct an objective and meaningful dialogue, then we have clear results. As a professor of criminal law, I would like to share with you that in the Republic of Slovakia, there were many different ways to promote the children's rights, especially when it comes to victims. The rights of children were defined by how specific procedures should be applied, and children were defined as specifically vulnerable potential victims. And we also defined how criminal law should take action, how criminal law should take care and protect of these children, how their hearing should be executed, how children's hearing in courts could be conducted in a way that all the affected parties' rights would be adhered to. Nevertheless, these hearings should not be repeated as part of the general hearing, so there would be only one hearing as such. And criminal research has proven that the child who experienced trauma, either was a witness or was a victim of a criminal law case, or someone who is actually the victim of a criminal act, this criminal act as a trauma is repeated when they have to go to court again. They have to bring up everything that they have been witnessing. And this is a secondary victimization, brings about a new trauma to describe the events and to talk about that. And this is why we specified the hearing of children in a way that it would take place only one single time with the help of audiovisual tools, ICT tools, and that in the course of the procedure, the children would not have to be featured and they wouldn't have to be present and they would not have to be, so to say, contributing to the regular hearing. So we do not have the right or the opportunity for the child to meet face-to-face with the indicted or any other participants of the procedure, the criminal procedure. So actually, the investigators, the police investigators, as the former dean or rector of the police academy, which operates in the Slovakian higher educational system as a university. Now, the policemen are trained and taught, and then those who will be actively conducting investigative procedures know this. So the training is set in a way that the future policemen and policewomen would know how they are to relate to children, how they are to conduct these processes. And in the whole of Slovakia, policemen get trained, or policemen are trained in this center. And they are also trained how to conduct the hearing of children. There are children psychologists who were included in the elaboration of the methodology based on the age of the children. So we have a really detailed methodology how a 7, 10, 15-year-old child is to be handled. And it is taught at the police academy. And there is also a special investigation room, which is state-sponsored, because with the NGOs, there were some rooms where investigations could be held, but those inspired us to create one at the police academy. And these are established in a way that the children could feel comfortable. It would be a cozy setting, and they would have the chance that in the course of the hearing would be able to engage in activities, for example, like using a coloring book, would be able to play with toys in the meanwhile. And we use children's psychologists who informed us that if the child cannot talk about, actually cannot speak about certain facts, and they would be able to draw those aspects. And the investigation, the hearing shouldn't be adding to the trauma. It shouldn't be conducted in a way that there would be rough questions addressed to them, but it would be packaged. So, for example, when it comes to the description of a specific event, and in this designated room, we introduced a new novel system, and these psychologists have been dealing with this really dire issue that used to be a taboo, namely the sexual violence committed against children. There are different actors, different puppets and different dolls that are present. And then you have even the family members represented with these dolls. And the children can point out facts. They cannot say it out loud. They cannot express themselves. They cannot identify by word, but with acting out with these dolls, they are able to become very much part of the criminal procedures. And we can achieve great results when it comes to evidence and the collection of evidence. I started out by saying and mentioning the very serious topic of how children are identified in the act on violence. They are specifically vulnerable actors. And now let me talk about a topic that is less traumatizing, namely the prevention steps and education. As part of the Ministry of the Interior, and when it comes to prevention of criminal acts, what we seek to achieve is no less than visiting high schools and elementary schools, and there would be courses, there would be informative sessions held which raise awareness about harassment, cyber harassment and bullying, so that children would be able to define if they encounter something negative. Oftentimes, what we see, if a child is harassed or bullied, they do not acknowledge it to themselves. They do not say it out loud that this is unacceptable, and the person bullying or harassing them should be punished. Now, when it comes to the different educational aspects, we hold trainings for the different children's categories, and that these become accessible to the students. They must understand these aspects, and afterwards, of course, we need to have a clear and constructive consequence. We want to achieve results. Now, of course, we want to avoid this altogether, and no children should want to encounter such situations, and that they would not have to validate these learned skills, and they should not even go to the teachers to talk about this. But we want to train them should it happen. And within the ministry, the teachers are also receiving training as part of their employment, because what we encounter is that oftentimes the teachers themselves disregard these events, and they don't take notice of such harassment and bullying. As a criminal lawyer, I know that I have a really deep insight into that. I do want criminal procedures to be launched, that these situations would be tackled, but it's really important to prevent them from happening. That if someone has any tendencies to act against the law regarding these criminal acts against children, that they would not do that. They would be aware of all the consequences that it would bring about. And it's not just psychologically and in an emotional sense, but also when it comes to, for example, the effect of these criminal acts perpetrated against children could have. Now, when we talk about education, schools and high schools, I want to mention, and I'm also smiling to myself because I'm also looking at people who were present at the Children's Parliament in Slovakia. I also talk about events which could be ensured in a preventive ways. For example, by equipping schools with a CCTV camera system. The children themselves say that these cameras should be installed in the schools, that there would be recordings, and then the institutions could be checked if something happens, that this could be truly identified. And if there is some sort of a threat, the children would be able to see the recording that is ensuring their rights. And when it comes to these CCTV systems, significant amounts are deployed to elementary and high schools. We do have the funds required for that. And what we are dealing with is that there would be general systems which can specifically pay attention to particular details. I'm not speaking in detail. I'm speaking somewhat in a vague manner, and that's on purpose because we are still conducting a dialogue in this respect. I would also like to talk to children and with the commissioner, the ombudsman, actually what their take is in this respect, because the CCTV system where there is a detailed recording, let's say detailed recording, you could say that, In general, there is a resistance against these systems as well. Now, we have to be very clear when it comes to the legislation. Of course, in compliance with national and international law, as well as the GDPR regulation. Now, in my short introduction, I mentioned that we need to listen to children. And this is what I would like to emphasize in my closing. Children are to be treated as partners. They should be the ones who come up with different ideas, which we shall implement in the legislative acts. And we want to also achieve that these initiatives by the children would be transposed into the practice. This is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.